One down, 3 to go in round number 1 for the Pacers. I told you we were going to play Slick Leonard announcing in our first show after each postseason win. When you hear boom, baby, that means the Pacers have gotten a win. And it was a lot of fun on Saturday. I loved, by the way, and I'm probably unique in this, it was very weird. It was very weird to walk out of the field house in broad daylight and be like, wait a minute, it's like 4 o'clock. Because, 41 times a year for the most part, if you go to every game or, if you watch every game, whatever it might be, at the end of the game, you're used to it being nighttime, whatever else. And there was, in game number 1, a fascinating thing that happened, and we're going to get way more into this over the course of the show today, especially getting set for game number 2 tomorrow night at the Fieldhouse between the Pacers and Bucks. But there was this interesting dynamic where in the mid-fourth quarter, the Pacers had been up. You look up at the scoreboard, and they're up whatever it was, 25, 28, whatever it was, and then you look at the clock. You look at Kyle Kuzma's stat line, and you're like, okay, I think they're in pretty good shape here. And just from a numbers standpoint, you felt very confident. But it was fascinating that when the Bucks got the lead down to 12, and it was still inside of like 5 minutes, there was a nervous energy in that building, undoubtedly. And part of that's just because it's the NBA, and especially if you've watched this Pacers team on both sides of it, you know that it's never over till it's over. But also, there is an element of truth to the fact that Giannis when he wants to score, he is virtually unstoppable. Now, the good news for Indiana is that nobody else ever got going offensively for Milwaukee. And so you let Giannis get his 36 and his 10 boards, and, he only had 1 assist, which is unusual. But it was a great day. Great day at the Fieldhouse. They're as good as the Pacers played, and as emphatic as they were for the most part in game number 1, there is still reason for pause going into game number 2 and adjustment to be made, and we'll get into all of it over the course of today. And, of course, it's also draft week in the NFL. Let me just tell you, here is my draft day prediction. Not Robin the Genie level prediction, but this is my draft day prediction for you, okay? I've seen numerous stories. The draft this year is in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Now, let's check the Thursday forecast for Green Bay, Wisconsin. And if you've never been to Green Bay, I like Green Bay. It's obviously, it goes without saying, a great football city. The whole city is centered around the Packers. I mean, literally, businessmen walking down the street wearing suits with a Packers parka in the wintertime. Well, in the spring, for that matter, as well. I mean, Green Bay is like the size of Muncie, except for it happens to have an NFL stadium. But the weather in Green Bay in April, Thursday, 67 degrees and rain, 65% chance. Friday, high of 58 and rain. Saturday, high of 58 but sunny. Weather's not going to be great. And I saw a news story over the weekend about the fact that Airbnbs and hotels and everything from the hospitality standpoint in the city of Green Bay is apparently way behind schedule. People are quite surprised that they are not renting out things at the level they thought, considering that last year the NFL draft saw, and I noticed this as well, now they're saying 700,000 last year in Detroit. I'm pretty certain, did they not say, Eddie Garrison, welcome back, did they not say last year that all told in the end they got 1 million people at the draft?
Oh, that's right, Jake. And,
no, honestly.
We were there.
Honestly, at
you
the
and I
end
were
of the
there
NFL
somehow.
draft, I think they said that there were 1 million total visitors, right?
Yeah, and, Jake, we got the email from the NFL saying thank you for attending the NFL draft. And, Jake, we attended it right here from our lovely seats in the DrivePeople.com studio.
That is correct. Because we were credentialed for the Combine, we were counted as attendees for the draft. But now they're saying there were 700,000 there last year. What I'm predicting is this, and then I'm going to get off this horse, at least for today, and then I'll make fun of it again tomorrow. They've already set the stories are that Green Bay is anticipating a letdown, kind of like, to be honest with you, the suburban areas of Indianapolis had during the Super Bowl. When the Super Bowl was here, it was awesome. I mean, it was awesome. But everything stayed epicenter downtown, and it did not move into Broad Ripple and Carmel and Castleton, etc. And I think they were anticipating this huge groundswell of all these people in Green Bay, and that number will be down. But I'm predicting that nonetheless they're going to say on Thursday, "Oh man, we were wrong. Look at the numbers that showed up. There are 200,000 people here on Thursday in 58-degree rain for the draft." But draft week is here, and it is not an overly intriguing draft from a prospect standpoint, but it is for the Colts from a tight end standpoint because there are two of them that do look like – there are two tight ends that certainly look like they can be direction-changing tight ends for your offense. And I don't think if the Colts stay at 14 that they're going to get a look at two different tight ends. I think if they stay at 14, then probably what you're going to see is that Tyler Warren out of Penn State is already off the board. It would be foolish of me to sit here and say, I think Chicago is going to take him at 10 or, wherever. But I do think that he is probably a top 10 level prospect, especially in this year's draft. Because, typically, for example, last year, Liatu Latu fell to the Colts where they drafted, and the Colts got their crack at the pick of the litter defensively in the draft because there was a run on other positions offensively and nobody went with defense because all of a sudden it can be a trend-setting league. And somebody all of a sudden breaks the seal on a certain position, and then there's a run on them because people start to panic because that's a position they need, and they've got to get one up top. And in this particular draft, I don't think there is a position that is all of a sudden going to redirect the flow of the draft because teams are moving up or moving into place, and that allows a Warren to fall back. Because organically, I think he is seen as a top 10 to 12 player. Now, that slides back if all of a sudden there's a run on quarterbacks and people are moving up, but there aren't quarterbacks in this draft. Cam Ward may go number 1 overall, and Shedeur Sanders may go in the first round, but I think, that's it. Same with, defensive line. I think there's talent in the defensive line, apparently, in this draft, but it's not one that people are moving up because there are game-changing, breakthrough players there. So Colston Loveland out of Michigan, the other tight end, could he be on the board for the Colts? Possibly, or they may wait until a later round. But Chris Ballard spoke today, and we will get into that as well and kind of break down the things that he had to say. Eddie Garrison is back from last week being in, and I'm not sure, he was in 9 different places out west, and now you're jet lagged, right?
I was a little bit, not going to lie. So last Tuesday, we flew out of Indy at 7, a little after 7, I think it was 7:15, flew to LAX, landed there a little after 10:30, and then had about an hour and a half layover at LAX.
Now, what'd you do during
Seattle.
the hour and a half in LAX?
So I went around to the different shops.
So you were in the international terminal?
I have no idea. If I'm being
the
honest.
international one's the one that has a Rolex store, and it looks like a mall.
No.
It's a dimly lit, mood lit mall.
No, there were a ton of shops like you typically see at various airports. They did have a full liquor store there. I was a little surprised, and selling the huge bottles too, like the handles and the gallons and fifths and whatever. I was like, whoa.
That was the duty free.
Really?
Yes, that's duty free. So what that is so you were near the international terminal.
Okay.
So the duty free is if you're traveling internationally, you can buy alcohol, cologne, and tobacco products without paying taxes on it. But you have to have a passport in order to be able to complete the transaction.
Interesting. Didn't know that, but now I learned something today.
That's right.
Thank you, Jake. So we flew there to Seattle after landing in LAX, landed in Seattle shortly after 2 o'clock, picked up the rental car, went to the Market District, We're there for a few hours, went back to our room, got ready for the Kraken game, watched the Kraken lose again. They're now 0-3
Now,
in
wait a minute.
attendance.
You flew out at what time?
6. We got up a little bit before 6 a.m. Eastern. We flew out at 7:15.
And you went
Eastern.
to the game that night?
Yep.
Okay, you had to have been, because you were like on 20 hours straight at that point, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, that's rough.
And then, so we got about 4 hours of sleep, and then left for the Seattle airport at 4 a.m. Pacific for our 6 a.m. flight to Vegas.
Wait a minute. You scheduled a 6 a.m. flight in the middle of your vacation?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally neurotic.
It was either 6 a.m. or it was like in the evening, and we didn't want to waste our days
Just out of curiosity.
a vacation.
Just out of curiosity. And we're not going to say the name of it, okay? But by any chance, were you on an airline that the name of the airline could be used either biblically or like in scary movies?
No.
Okay. That's good. Okay, so then Vegas, did you won or lost money?
Lost a little. Not a lot, a little.
Okay. And then you got back, and now you don't know what day it is.
Is it Tuesday? Is it Wednesday?
It feels like it, doesn't it?
I did. That's how I felt Saturday. I kept asking Olivia when we got back. I was like, is it Saturday or is it Sunday? Is it Friday? Because we had a red-eye flight on the way back, so we flew out 12:30 a.m. Pacific, which is 3:30 a.m. Eastern. Landed in Atlanta shortly after 7:30, and then had about a 2-hour layover.
Do you have the ability to sleep on an airplane?
Yes. Fell asleep on the way from Vegas to Atlanta, and then Atlanta to Indy.
Vegas to Atlanta, that's a haul, yeah. How long were you in Atlanta?
We were there for 2 hours.
Yeah, okay. That airport, it takes you 2 hours just to get from one gate to the next, so that's good.
I know.
Right?
We got a nice little walk.
All right, well, welcome back, and we'll try to get you some caffeine here as Eddie readjusts back to the Eastern time zone.
I just wish the people could have seen the early arrival for you today just because of my return and just this exuberance of happiness, joy.
Okay. That's actually, Eddie, my exuberance and joy is because the Australians are in town. Michael and Marcus are back from Australia. They become, I think people on this show know of them. They're the ones that I met at a Pacer game in, I believe, 2019, and they have been back several times. They came back. Not only are they going to game 2 tomorrow night, they went to game 1 on Saturday. They are then going to Milwaukee from there and going to games 3 and 4 in Milwaukee before they then go to Los Angeles, tool around L.A., and they're headed back to Australia. But we have had already a huge amount of fun. My friend Marcus, not Michael's son Marcus, but my buddy Marcus, who lives in Auckland, New Zealand, is also in town. So we all went out to dinner on Friday night. Michael coming from Australia, Marcus coming from Auckland, New Zealand, and then my buddy Mike Byron coming from Fishers, and he was an hour late. So everything was as it should be in the world on Friday and over the course of the weekend. It was great fun. Let's get into what took place on Saturday. Actually, before we do that, I also would be remiss if I did not say this. I hope everyone had a wonderful Easter weekend. Went to my parents' house. It was great to get together with family and et cetera yesterday. And while I am not Catholic, certainly knew of and saw the news this morning on the passing of the Pope. I know that obviously his health had been in question for the last month or so. And so for those, and I certainly understand respect, not just for those that are practicing Catholics, but I think just in general, theologically speaking, anybody, no matter what your religion, your faith, your involvement, certainly somebody who is a representative, not just from the religious standpoint, but an ambassador of peace and goodwill and compassion for people worldwide, a shining example of that throughout his life. And for those that are certainly of the Catholic faith, condolences today on what I know is a heavy day with the passing of the Pope, or that news coming out this morning that he had passed yesterday. The game in game number 1, I thought what was interesting for the Pacers, there were 2 things that happened early in that game that jumped out at me. And I often harken back to this, and I know that I probably dwell on this era Pacers, maybe too much, but I do it because I think it gives precedent or it gives baseline of understanding sometimes of things as they happen today. I used to always say with Rick Smits, and I say that because Rick Smits is probably the last true, I'm trying to think, Eddie, aside from Miles Turner, if you were going with a true center position, I think of Jermaine O'Neal more as a power forward. If you're going with the true center position, is there one that I'm missing? Would it be unfair to say that Rick Smits was the last most offensively gifted center for the Indiana Pacers up to Miles Turner?
Sabonis?
Yeah, I think of Sabonis again as a power. I mean, I think Sabonis was a power forward because Turner was the center, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Roy Hibbert had his moments, but he was more of just a defensive-based center, right?
Yeah. I can't think of him.
So my point being, Rick Smits, you could always tell in the first 5 minutes of a game whether it was going to be a Smits on or off game. If he hit his first 2 or 3 shots within the first 5 possessions of a game for Indiana, you could tell he had to touch that day, and he was going to be on it all day. If he missed a couple shots or they went away from him early, a lot of times then it was a day statistically where he was not as impactful. I think Miles Turner's a little of the same way. If he hits a 3 within the first couple of possessions or gets his outside shot going, then it just opens up everything, including his I'm not saying confidence, because he is still able to hit shots even if he hasn't hit one all game, like a key third quarter 3, that kind of thing. But it just seems to stretch everything out so much, obviously, when he hits an early shot, and that just opens things up across the board. But what really took place at the beginning of game 1, was, and I love this, and is it something that they are going to be able to do throughout the series? I think the answer may be yes, and hear me out on what I mean by that. I loved the early aggression and involvement of Andrew Nembhard. And I know that when I have said on this show numerous times that Nembhard is the one position that I feel could be upgraded, and I've always said, I mean none of that is a knock on Andrew Nembhard. I just mean that when I think of a 2 in today's NBA, I think of a guy that is a longer wing defender, like a 6'6", 6'7" guy, as opposed to, Nembhard at 6'4", or he may be listed at, I think he's listed at 6'4", actually. But, he's not an overly flashy, like, wing-type player. He has an outstanding mid-range game. He hits threes when you least expect it, but when you most need it, it seems he doesn't. The same can be said for free throws. But what he has, and this sounds really weird, what Andrew Nembhard has as much as any player, and it's to the advantage Indiana in game number 1. Andrew Nembhard has as good a last-second body control as any player I've seen in a long time at getting to the basket. When he has this, like, extra kind of bounce step. He's like, I've always said, he's like the raindrop that you watch on a window. Just when you think it's going in one spot, it makes one little move and bounces all of a sudden like 6 lanes over to the right or to the left. He has the ability to do that in kind of this like hop step way. But when he goes up for a layup or when he is in traffic, he can contort and redirect as well as anybody I've seen in a very long time at his body control and still stay within an area of understanding of where the basket is. I know that sounds really weird, but if you've seen it, you kind of know what I'm talking about. And for that reason, he is a very effective scorer when he tries to penetrate right to the glass. He did that right away in game number 1, and I think between him doing that and then Turner hitting an early 3, now all of a sudden Milwaukee's on roller skates defensively. And they were on roller skates defensively the entire game because that was the tone that Indiana set. They didn't come down, work it around, find a 3 from Siakam, find a 3 from Nesmith in the corner. They instead hit them boom, boom. We're going to go right at the basket, and then as soon as you do that, boom, boom, we're going to go right out. And Milwaukee was completely off guard defensively for the better part of that game, and Nembhard's aggressiveness facilitated that, along with Turner hitting that three. The reason why Andrew Nembhard may be able to continue to do that, I do expect. I've not been told officially. I don't even know if it's officially out there. Eddie, I'll let you know if you see it. Maybe I slept on it and didn't see it. I've not seen if it is official that Damian Lillard is playing in Game 2.
Shams Charania of ESPN prior to Game 1 said that it would be either a Game 2 or Game 3 return for Lillard.
I am 100% expecting that he is going to play tomorrow. From everything I've heard, I think he's playing. And if Damian Lillard, who got a technical foul, I mean, kudos to him. This is what's amazing. What's truly remarkable about the Bucks in Game 1, Damian Lillard wasn't even active in the game and got into the box score, and Kyle Kuzma played 22 minutes and had 0 points, 0 assists, 0 block shots, 0 turnovers, made 0 field goals, and 0 free throws.
Are we going to stop calling
and
it
0
the,
rebounds?
Tony Snell, and we're going to start calling it the Kyle Kuzma?
Correct. The perfect stat line. I mean, the people in front of me were joking around when Kuzma got in the game late. Kuzma got in the game late, back in the game, I should say, because obviously he was in the game for the better part of the game. But late in the game, Kuzma got in, and people around me were completely mocking him because they're like, look how nervous he is that he just wants 1 rebound. And you could kind of tell, it felt like he did, in fact, want some, like, just give me, like, 1, let me get an assist. And they kind of spread it and killed the clock, and you could see defeat on his face. There's a guy that sits directly in front of me at the Pacer games that I think set, like, a Division III record for free throws. Jack Davidson, I think he hit like a record for most consecutive free throws at Wabash years ago. But Jack Davidson sitting in front of me was like playfully mocking Kuzma the entire game, and I'm convinced that Kuzma heard it. Convinced of it. And I think that Giannis hears it when you go to the free throw line, by the way. More on that coming up. But back to Damian Lillard. It's impressive that Lillard got in the box score with the technical foul in a game he wasn't even playing in, and Kuzma basically did not, other than 2 personal fouls. But if Lillard comes back, the thought would be in game number 2 that that's bad news for Indiana. But oddly enough, I actually think Damian Lillard's return is good news for the Pacers more than it's good news for the Bucks. And I'll explain what I mean by that, and why I think you've got to give a second a pause when you're getting on Giannis about the free throw thing and counting it down, even though it got in his head. That we'll hear from Chris Ballard today on the program. Mike Chappell at 1 o'clock. Michael Grady, who was on the call for ESPN, 2 o'clock today. A lot to unpack on a Monday here. Query and Company on the Fan. We'll let you hear a couple of things that he had to say about the upcoming NFL draft. Do that in about 12 minutes from now. As for game number 1 and game number 2, and my thoughts on the Damian Lillard return. I think Damian Lillard is absolutely going to play in game number 2. I'm fully anticipating that. I think the Pacers are as well. And I think that's good news. I think that's good news for Indiana. It's good news all the way around because you want to play the best players. And he is a fabulous talent. And it would be absolutely moronic of me to sit here, Indianapolis talk show host says that Damian Lillard's not any good. That's not at all what I'm saying. I think the Bucks, since Damian Lillard, how many games did he miss, Eddie, or has he missed with the blood clot? Can you look that up by chance? I'm going to guess it's somewhere around, if I had to guess, I would say 12 games, 13 games total, kind of a spitball there. But I think sometimes in a team like that, with a guy as dominant as Giannis, they figure out how to play with a certain lineup. And they adjust to not having a player on the floor. And in the case of Damian Lillard, who is a lightning in a bottle scorer, undoubtedly, and you've got to be aware of him, and he can be really dangerous. I'm aware of all of those things. But the number of games that he missed.
15, 14 regular season, and then game 1.
Okay. So 15 games. So you're looking at essentially.
He last played on March 18th.
Okay. So nearly, what, 25% of a full season. And yes, any team would rather have him on the floor than not. I get that. But even with a player as great as Lillard, there's the possibility that bringing him back into the mix does take a game or two to adjust. Well, you're already now, if you are Milwaukee, in a situation where you've got to win, 4 of the next 6 games. And if you're the Pacers, you simply need to go 500 over the next 6 games because you've gotten one already, right? So there's not a whole lot of margin for error there if you're Milwaukee in an adjustment period. Now, he is a veteran player and a fabulous talent and one of the top, probably at this point in his career, 30 players in the league. At one time, he was probably a top 10 to 12 player in the league, but he's older and he's coming off injury. But with all of that said, he is not a great defender. And not only is he not a great defender, but he's not a great defender who is coming off of injury. That's the main reason I'm saying that. If a Nembhard or a Halliburton, either one, but if this allows Nembhard to stay offensively aggressive, I think that just changes for Indiana so much more the look that they can give. And if Nembhard is able to play at a higher level as a result, that's huge advantage for the Pacers. And then secondly, even though, and what I'm about to say, I'm going to be, when I say it, contradictory because of contradicted by the fact that Giannis only had a single assist in game number 1. But the reality still is, even though they got down 20 with Giannis having, essentially his way offensively for the better part of that game, I still would rather have the ball, if I'm the Bucks, in Giannis's hands than not in Giannis's hands. And the more that Damian Lillard's on the floor, the more you are then taking Giannis as an offensive threat, not out of the lineup, but you're taking the ball out of his hands. And he is so good at getting to the basket either for a layup or free throws. And even though we didn't see this in game 1, don't be fooled by it. Giannis getting a single assist in game number 1 is the anomaly. I'm going to bet you right now, I will predict right here on this Monday, the 21st of April, heading into game number 2. Maybe it doesn't happen in game 2, but certainly when they go back to Milwaukee, I'm going to predict right now that Giannis has at least 10 assists in that game. Unless they are giving ball dominance to Damian Lillard. which may be the case in supporting what I'm saying here. I think taking the ball away from Giannis, in addition to taking advantage of Damian Lillard's any defensive deficiency he might have, could mean advantage Indiana for a game or a game and a half until Lillard gets adjusted. And what I'm saying is if you're already up 1-0, Pacers go up 2-0, it's going to be really difficult for Milwaukee at that point. But you got to get that one. It's not a given, but I think benefit. Now, here's the other thing that happened in game number 1, and I love it. But I also think that you've got to give yourself a second of pause on this. Did you notice, Eddie, you watched the game, right? You said that you were coming off the red eye and you had – now, did you bring back any gummies?
I can't reveal that, Jake. I opened myself up to potential crimes.
Okay. I didn't say – I mean, you could have just stopped at like the Hudson bookseller and gotten yourself some Haribo gummy bears, right?
Maybe, but I was in Seattle and I was in Las Vegas, Jake, so.
Okay. So, but you were dozing in and out, not from that, but from the jet lag while you were watching the game, correct?
Sure, yeah.
Did you notice anything from the crowd standpoint when Giannis would go to the free throw line?
They were counting 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 10.
I love the city of Indianapolis.
I even noticed that toward the end of the game, Toppin was telling the officials, like, come on, man. He's taking 12 seconds to shoot the ball. Okay. Let's go. I
love the city of Indianapolis. I bleed the torch for the state of Indiana, right? I love all things indigenous about Indianapolis. I went to the Speedway MCL yesterday because it was the last day in business for the Speedway MCL. I mean, if something is heritage to Indianapolis, I absolutely love everything about it.
Did you steal a sign?
Didn't take anything. I'm showing my maturity, right?
Proud of you.
You know what? I was going to ask them if they had a play or a trait. I worked at MCL at one time. So I was going to ask them if they had a one plate or a tray that had the MCL logo on it, although admittedly, I'm sure they're all going to any of their other 13 locations. But they didn't have the marking on it of MCL, so I didn't ask. But all I'm saying is this. The people of Indy, like, I'm one of all of us, right? I'm an Indy resident just like everybody else. So it pains me when I have to point out something where I notice that there's an error amongst the Indianapolis population. And yes, it's super fun when Giannis goes to the line and the whole crowd starts counting. It's awesome. I love everything about it, and I'm telling you, do it twice as loud in game 2 because I think it does impact him a little bit. He's only a 61% free throw shooter, and he did not shoot the ball well in that game from the free throw line. And I think it does. I mean, I have no idea if it actually is the reason he's missing free throws, but it's fun to think about.
I have 2 thoughts on this. One, can we change it up for game 2? Can we count down from 10? Because if you're counting up, you never know. Like in his mental clock, he may be counting and could get into a rhythm. Maybe we count down from 10 to speed him up a little bit.
That's an excellent point.
I think Jeff Rickard mentioned this on the morning show. You throw out, instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you go like 1, 64, 32, like say out random numbers to kind of throw him off track.
You wonder if it's part of his rhythm and hearing it, right? But
Maybe.
Here's the thing.
He's been hearing it for years now.
Here's the thing, Eddie, where the people of Indianapolis have erred. And I hate saying this. And when I say it, it's not going to be popular opinion. I love it, and I hope everybody keeps doing it. And, Eddie, your thought is a good one of counting from 10 to 1. I like that. He's actually not breaking the rule. He's actually shooting it in time, and I'll tell you why. Because the count begins a second after he gets the ball. Right? They're throwing him the ball, and as soon as the ball touches his hands, everybody's going 1, 2. Well, that's not actually it. He gets the ball, and that's when he gets the ball, you wait 1 second, and then you count. So you hit the button, right? When you hit the button on a stopwatch, it takes a second before you see the 1. The people of Indianapolis are counting as soon as you hit the button. 1. No, it's you hit the button, you wait a second. 1, 2. And
this is from the official NBA rulebook.
Okay.
He shall attempt a free throw within 10 seconds of controlling the basketball.
Correct.
In such a way that the ball enters the basket or touches the ring.
Okay. So when they throw him the basketball, okay, the second that the ball is touching the palm of his hand, people are going, 1. It's not. The ball touched his hand, and it's 1, 2. And I will say, people are understandably, I love it. But believe me, I sat there and hit the watch on it, and I'm like, yeah, he's getting every one of them, like right at the 10-second mark. Don't get me wrong, but it's not 12 seconds. In addition to that, I never noticed this until game 1, and I'm not saying 2 wrongs make a right, because I don't think either one's wrong. You know who takes forever at the free throw line? You know who takes longer than Giannis? And I didn't notice it until game 1, because now it's on my mind, right? I'm watching it, and so therefore I'm conscientious of it.
Is it a Pacers player?
Yes.
Siakam?
Benedict Mathurin.
Oh, yeah.
Benedict Mathurin takes forever. Now, the one area for Giannis that I will agree with Pacer fans, of which I'm one, but the one area that is a little bit ridiculous is how they let him sit there and do like 2 practice free throws before they give him the ball. I think there was even one time where they threw him the ball and he threw it back. Like, no, I'm not ready yet. I mean, at some point it's like, look, you've got to, but this has been a thing league-wide with him for a while now, right?
Yes, it's been going on for a handful of years. That's why I was saying to count down from 10 instead of up.
I kind of like that. Because then you feel like it's expedited, right?
Yeah,
like there's going to be a buzzer that goes off, right?
Yeah.
What if everybody – well, you can't do that. You can't do like noise things in the crowd. But it is interesting that the officials, you would think the officials have to be, that's the thing. NBA officials are, and yes, there's lots of argument that you can make about them and everything else. They are the best officials in the world. And so they have to know they are well aware at this point of it, and you would think that they are saying to themselves, okay, if this guy's egregiously breaking a rule, we've got to bring it to attention because the entire crowd is aware of it. But, Eddie, I kind of like your thinking on this. Now, again, keep doing it the way you're doing it. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying to people, I'm saying by the letter of the law, if you watch an official when he has his arm to his side and he's counting down a 10-second count, his count begins, 1 second into it. So his arm doesn't move for a second because he's sitting there and he says, 1, and then boom, he's counting. But nonetheless, it has to interfere with your mindset a little bit in your rhythm if you're at the line, right? Especially 100%. If you're counting down to 0. Like there's a deadline coming, right?
100%. Imagine if they made it to the finals against the Clippers somehow, some way, and they have to go up against the wall.
Yeah.
Giannis may go 1 for 30.
10, 9, 8. Now here's the thing. But people are more count it like this. 10, 9, 8, 7. I mean, it's fun for sure. It's definitely fun. Chris Ballard spoke earlier today, NFL Draft. Had a couple of interesting things to say, and a couple of them that sound like we're playing you a clip from 2019. We'll explain next. Okay, Chris Ballard met today with the media in preview of this week's upcoming round number 1 of the NFL draft. All talk on tight ends. All talk on tight ends. And when it comes to, I think it's a foregone conclusion they're going to draft a tight end. Now, does that mean in round number 1? That remains to be seen. But question is this, and I thought this year for the tight end room for the Colts, when you look at Mo Alley Cox, you look at Jelani Woods, you look at Kylan Granson, you look at Drew Ogletree, you look at Will Mallory. I mean, all across the board. I'm not saying any of them are bad players, but they all seem to be similar players to one another. Good blocking tight ends, maybe not fleet of foot tight ends. So, Chris Ballard, question number 1 for you today. What exactly is it that you are looking for in a tight end when you're thinking about the one that you'd like to add to your roster?
They have to be able to play on all 3 downs, but one that can affect the middle of the field. One of the most underappreciated players to ever come to this program is Jack Doyle. He is. The guy was great. He was great. I don't think everybody recognized that, but all he did was block the edge consistently, do all the dirty work, and catch every ball thrown to him. That's all he did, and gave us a real threat in the middle of the field. Was he a dynamic, going to average 15, 16 yards a catch? No, but he was a damn good player. I want somebody who can be consistent and actually be a guy that the defense has to, account for. The 3 down part is big because if that guy, and look, all of them have to be functional enough to block. That's, to me, the hard one to find. Everybody, the second you don't have a guy that can block is the second the coaching staff is griping and saying, we got to have a guy that can block. But to be able to play on all 3 downs, to be able to be functional in the run game to where you don't necessarily know it's always a pass, when he's in the game. And then to be able to, finish and make plays at critical times and give the quarterback an option in the middle of the field.
By the way, not to push back there, but one area where I will respectfully disagree with Chris Ballard, when he says a lot of people may not realize how good Jack Doyle was or he was underrated. Jack Doyle was one of the most beloved players of his era in franchise history for the exact reasons Chris Ballard pointed out. But don't sell short the fan base here for sure in terms of their understanding of the tight end position. And Jack Doyle was a standard for sure of the kind of player that you want. Now, question is, it is a foregone conclusion, is it not, Chris Ballard? 14th pick overall, doesn't have to be a tight end?
It's a really good class, and I think at every level. But it's a good class. If you look at some of the better tight ends in this league, and they come from everywhere. Kelsey was a 3, Andrews was a 3, Kittle was a 5. They come from everywhere. Bowers was a 1 last year. They come from everywhere. But it's a good class, and we think there's some good depth in this class.
By chance, Eddie Garrison.
Yes.
I forgot. Have we updated the subscription to the Elixir?
I don't know. You're the one who pays the bill on that because you are the chairman of the board. So did you pay the bill?
I think I did. The Elixir, for those that don't remember, this is where, and I bought, if I remember correctly, I bought a cheaper version of this, and it came with a limited time trial membership. And then I think we extended it. But what the Elixir is this is a super involved database computer that I purchased. And it's a tremendous invention that came out. You got AI and all that stuff now, right? It's not necessarily that, but this has been around for a while, but I got a discount, a flash sale a couple of years ago on late night on Thanksgiving during one of my insomniac brain drops. I got on the eBay and found this. This is a wonderful computer that we have that you take something that a person says, run it through the Elixir, and then it spits out a direct interpretation of the actual truth serum, what the person means. So if you can, play again that clip from Chris Ballard. Let's run it through the Elixir, and let's tell you what Chris Ballard really has to say about whether or not they're going to get a tight end at the beginning of this draft.
It's a really good class, and I think at every level. But it's a good class. If you look at some of the better tight ends in this league, and they come from everywhere. Kelsey was a 3. Andrews was a 3. Kittle was a 5. Like, they come from everywhere. Bowers was a 1 last year. Like, they come from everywhere. But it's a good class, and we think there's some good depth in this class.
Okay, so that actually happened quickly, right? The Elixir has mixed it up, and here's what the Elixir has to say. This is the Elixir's interpretation of what Chris Ballard had to say.
Have you watched the NFL? We regularly give up huge games to guys no one heard of in college. Slow your roll on first-round guesses. We may take tight end on day 6.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Sounds like what he's saying there, right? Like you just don't know. Big news is that Anthony Richardson, he did say that they've talked to the guy that is working with Anthony Richardson, and it's very positive. They feel good about it. But Daniel Jones was brought in. He was paid a ton of money. Now you've got a quarterback competition. Chris Ballard, your thoughts on the fact that you have two guys that are trying to find their footing in the NFL with Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones and an open competition?
Sometimes you got to be bad before you can be good at playing this game. Sometimes you got to struggle before you can be good. We got two guys that have had some really strong flashes, and they've had some bad moments too, and that's okay. I think both of them will be better because of this, and I think the team will be better because of it. Competition brings out the best in everybody, and I think we'll see that. Whether, to sit here a day before we even start the offseason and have a vision of how – you don't want to begin with an end in mind. We're not going to do that. It's like the draft. You don't want to begin with an end in mind. You got to let things play out the way they should and compete, and who gives the team the best chance to win. If I'm a betting man, both of them, at some point, both of them will help us.
I guess there is some truth to, if you're close to a decade into it with one playoff win, the heck, let's not go for the end in mind, man. Let's enjoy the ride, baby.
What do you think he meant at the end of that, by the way?
Well, here's the thing. Should we run that through the Elixir? Go ahead and hit the Elixir. Go ahead and hit the Elixir, and we'll see exactly what he had to say.
I pray that being bad means you can be good, because these guys struggled more than they didn't to begin their careers. Here's hoping.
Oh, he threw a like in there at the end.
How nice of the Elixir to do that.
I do understand what he's saying, and the fact of if you are definitively saying, I think when he says you can't go into a beginning looking at the end, what he's saying is you can't put the pressure or the onus on a player of saying it's now or never, because you just don't know how guys are going to react to that, truthfully. But back to the tight ends and just the tight end group. We've said this a lot about the Colts going into drafts in the last few off seasons. It seems as though there is a position that needs to be addressed, that more often than not, they punt a year until they find out that everybody else was right. It was wide receiver for a long time. Everybody was kind of mocked about saying they needed wide receivers, and then to their credit, they addressed it, and they've done a good job for the most part. Josh Downs is a good player. Michael Pittman Jr. played hurt, good player. Obviously, for that matter, Alec Pierce is starting to show some things. Good player. A.D. Mitchell, maybe a swing and a miss, but we'll see. It's only 1 year into it. Tight end, obviously, is the room now that all focus goes on, and seemingly they're going to address it. The future of the tight end room for the Indianapolis Colts, according to Chris Ballard.
We like a group we have, what their subset, what they can do. They're good. We have two really good blockers. We have a young kid that we think's got speed and some upside. But saying that, if we got a chance to take one that we think can really make a difference, we will do it. I do know this, though. You can't chase, when you end up chasing a need, okay, or something that is, that's when you make mistakes. So we'll let the board play out the way the board should play out. Of course, in the first round, I can, you can already see how we have it stacked versus how the outside world has it stacked. I promise you it's not the same. It's not. They don't have anything on the line. Like, I always laugh when everybody says, well, you reached or you took him too high. Well, by whose standard? Like, by whose standard is that criticism coming from? So we line it up and we draft them as, we think is best for our team.
The only problem with that, and I understand it is his job to have the backs of his players. I get it. But we like the group we have. A year ago, they liked the group they had in the defensive backfield. Just had to spend a lot of money in free agency to improve it. 3 years ago, they liked the group they had at wide receiver. Had to spend a lot of draft capital to improve it. They've liked the group they had at pass rush. Spent high draft picks the last 2 years to improve it. So if the precedent would be if they like the group they have at tight end, they're about to spend something to improve it. Mike Chappell joins us next. Mike Chappell is with CBS 4 WXIN 59. Chris Ballard spoke with the media this morning. NFL draft getting underway on Thursday. Chap joins us as he's kind enough to do each and every week on the always busy and available for your company to sponsor guest line. Chap, let's get right to the Chris Ballard conversation, pre-draft talk. Generically speaking, I'll throw it to you this way. He said what that maybe either surprised you or caught your ear that you did not expect?
Nothing really. One thing we tried to pin him down on, and for whatever reason he wasn't going for it, is we 4 or 5 questions were like, how many players does he have, like with first round grades? I think they call them blue players. In the past, he's told us, X number, and the number doesn't matter, but whatever reason, this year it was just like he didn't want to get into it. Maybe it's because, and I'm guessing there aren't as many players with first round grades as there normally are. I don't know. That was the only thing. Other than that, not much. The first thing I'm writing about, I'm getting ready to post it now, is he addressed the quarterback situation with Richardson and Daniel Jones. That's, again, as we've talked about, that will be the overriding story until it's not, and until Richardson grabs the position and has a good season. Other than that, it's going to be, some level of uncertainty immediately and in long term. That's what struck me, and he just stressed again. It's going to be whoever gives them the best chance to win. I believe that. It needs to be Richardson for all the things we've talked about. But other than that, and we tried to, I think I asked him and someone else asked him about, he's talked openly about the tight end position needing a difference maker or a game changer, which they don't have. And he still mentions how we like the players we have, but he did mention that this is a deep draft, at least at the top, 3, 4, 5 players that can be viable players. At the top is Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. And that, maybe that's where they find the guy, but he wasn't going to pin himself in as no GM would do. But he just said that these tight ends, a couple of them at least, bring what the kind of player you need. So that's I try to go through all the BS, not from him, but from just outside. It's funny how you read the mock drafts and we're these experts and draft guys who do their homework, but the people who know what this team's needs are the people that cover this team all the time. The half a dozen of us that are there all the time. And this is one where I don't want to overcomplicate things and don't overanalyze it. They need a tight end in the worst way. And there probably will be one there at 14. So don't overthink it. Bring in a guy that can automatically help your offense, helps your quarterbacks, whether it's Richardson or Daniels or Jones. And then move on to your second round picks. That's the way I look at it. And I don't want to overthink it because this is a case where need and best player is probably going to be a tight end.
Do you believe, Chap? Here was the thing that jumped out at me. When Chris Ballard said we like our guys in talking about the tight end room,
right?
That to me now feels like the proverbial university saying we stand by our coach like a week before they fire him. Because if you go back the last 3 or 4 years, the precedent is that oftentimes when he says that, that's the room that ends up getting the most shakeup, correct?
Yeah, and it's not wanting to throw some shade on the players you have in the building.
Yeah, and I do understand and respect why he would say it, right? I get it.
Right. But the numbers are what they are. 39. It's funny how sometimes you have to double check the numbers because you're not. It's 39, 467, and 2. Those are catches, yards, and touchdowns by the tight end room last year. So it just makes too much sense. And if they want to draft a linebacker at 14, the Jihad Campbell kid from, I think it's Alabama. Okay, but only then if you get your tight end in the second round, maybe Mason Taylor, the kid from LSU, who's got the son of Jason Taylor, I guess. But then you're settling for what everyone says is the third best tight end. And while I understand you're getting better at linebacker with the guy who's coming back from, I think it's shoulder surgery, if I'm not mistaken. So I just think that this is one where you need to help this offense. They've already spent $1 zillion with a corner and a safety. So you've really helped the defense. And yes, there's still holes. You need depth on the defensive line, another edge rusher, another tackle. I understand that, but no position is more. Are there more red flags than tight end? There just are. So again, this is one you want to simplify it and say, hey, tight end, a couple really good ones that I was looking at the last time. They're at 14. The last time 2 tight ends were taken in the top 14, thinking maybe they'll both be gone, was in the 1970s, like 1973.
That's right.
So one of these guys should be there. Now, how they've got them stacked, which one they prefer, I don't know. But either one is going to do wonders for your offense. And now, will that mean you take a lesser player at linebacker? Yes, probably. They've done, but the one thing that they should lean on is they've been pretty good about drafting linebackers. They got Shaq Leonard in round 2 because he fit what they wanted, and he was a marvelous player. So again, an offensive guard. I see some teams or some guys mock these guys with a guard. I might cuss out loud if they draft guard on Thursday, just because Howard Mudd soured me on offensive linemen because he just figured you could always find guards, get you some good tackles, get you a good center, and then you bring in good players at guard, but not great players. Now Quentin Nelson's an aberration, but again, I don't want to overthink this, and it just makes sense at tight end.
Chap, I've always felt like, and you tell me if I'm wrong here. Correct. Quentin Nelson's a great player, right? Nobody denies that.
He might be a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah. To me, I hate to sound like such a negative Nancy here. To me, and where I have always felt the Colts erred originally in the blueprint was, their best players were linebacker, guard, and running back. And to me, like I've always said, that's like in 2025 in the NBA, trying to win with your 3 best players being Dikembe Mutombo, Sam Cassell, and Charles Oakley. Fabulous players, but of a different era. And the game has changed a little bit. Now, obviously, the running back, it seems to kind of be coming back, and you would rather have Jonathan Taylor than not have him. But it just seems to me that guard is a tough spot to hide your very best player. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and Sonny, we were talking about this again in the media room, and and this is not. I'm not dissing Quentin Nelson. I'm not. He's an elite player at his position, and I don't know how you quantify how he lifts the players around him, because he does. In the offensive line room, how he elevates players. I just would rather have an edge pass rusher. Now, you got to hit on the guy. I'm just saying, if you get a player who has the same production as he did at a premium position, at left tackle, at defensive end, at maybe cornerback or receiver. But one argument I was making is, let's say we get into September and things are going well, and if you're told you're going to miss a player for 4 games, and it's going to be Quentin Nelson or Bernhard Raimann, wouldn't you try to get by without your guard more than your left tackle? And I realize these are sort of, relative things you're talking about, but boy, I've seen how this team operates without a viable left tackle, and it's not pretty. I think you can do things when you're missing a guard, even one as great as Quentin is. So, Rick Venturi and I, we're sort of in the same, boat with this. Is Nelson was obviously a great pick at 6. I mean, I did some research, and the last time anybody took a guard that high was like in 1970 something. The Saints did, and then it's sort of compounded because he's that good. Then you re-sign him to a massive contract. So we'll see. And again, if in 15 years he's in the Hall of Fame, which I won't be doing the presentation at that time, I promise you that. but great. That's just great. You look at the way the league is, and it's sort of what you said. It's built around those difference-making positions, and obviously, I tell you, we wouldn't be having this discussion if they had gotten the quarterback right before now. You can get by with that if you've got that quarterback to where he covers up not having.
Okay, Chap, I want to get to that because I have a growing theory about quarterback. Okay, and I want to run it past you, and I want to give you the green light to tell me that's the dumbest thing you've ever heard. Okay.
Well, you've said some dumb things, so this could be a dude.
I know.
But go ahead.
So I'm curious about this, and I want to be very clear here. I mentioned this on Friday, and what I'm saying from my behalf is speculative, educated speculative, but speculative, not fact, okay? But I believe that we can look back on a year from now to today, and we can say that the biggest priority in Jim Irsay's life was the health of Jim Irsay. Understandably so, respectfully so, and I'm glad to see that everybody is happy to see that he is on a proper path in terms of his health, okay?
Right.
But I've started to wonder if what we're seeing now with Daniel Jones coming in and with the sudden immediacy of pushing Anthony Richardson is not only the result of having tried other avenues to get him going and on track, but also the fact that you now have an owner who, because he was able to take care of priority A himself and is back now in a season that it's anticipated he is going to be more present than a year ago and perhaps even more vocal than a year ago, that means that the quarterback position for the general manager was, okay, my time to play with this or wait on this is over. I've got to get this taken care of now because Boss Man's back and he's letting me know exactly what he thinks, and what he thinks is we need to get somebody else in here. Thoughts?
At quarterback?
Yes.
I think the Jones signing was to say that if it doesn't work, if Richardson hasn't shown the right progress, then we've got a guy that can win 9, 10, 11 games with. The problem is,
does the Jones signing happen if Jim Irsay is still not as everyday involved?
Yeah, they had to. It had to be somebody because Richardson's given you no choice. Richardson has forced this on them by the way he's played and by the injuries and by being benched twice or 2 games last year because whatever you want to call it, not approaching your job the right way. I mean, it's like one of us being suspended for a month because we took I don't know. That always bothers me more than most things because a quarterback shouldn't have to be told that you need to pay more attention to what's going on and the urgency. That bothers me. But I think they had to bring in somebody, and it was a bad year to do it. I mean, if it wasn't Daniel Jones, it was going to be Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota or somebody. This was going to happen regardless of Jim Irsay's health status, his mobility, whatever you want to call it.
Do you believe Jim Irsay believes in Anthony Richardson's ability still to recover as much as Chris Ballard does?
That's a good question. It's a good question. But to say as much, it's obvious that everyone in that building has questions. They have to. If after watching 2 seasons of what he's done doesn't give you pause,
but Chap, I would subscribe to this, and I know he's been injured. If you're into year 3 at a quarterback where you have questions about, you don't have a quarterback.
Well, I can argue that stronger than I can the other way. That's why I said it. I hope that Richardson emerges as the guy because the alternative is not pleasant. It's not. We spend so much time BSing in the media room, but if you can imagine Jones beating out Richardson because he's the best chance to win, and they go 10-7.
Yeah, you're back to square one, right?
Well, then where are you? You're
Yeah.
going to give Daniel Jones a $40 million contract, and then you can't keep Richardson around. So then you're back to the carousel, and you're in no position next year to draft a quarterback in what's supposed to be a good quarterback draft because you're going to be drafting 15, 16, maybe 14. So that's why it's again, I go back to the fact that Richardson has forced this issue by the way he has played and been injured and being benched. And regardless of what, I would take the owner out of this mix as far as the decision of why this was done. It had to be done. Whether this was Jim Irsay, whether this was Carly Irsay, whether this was Chris Ballard, it had to be done. And we're not going to know until, I don't know, we'll have some signs in training camp. We'll have some signs in OTAs. But until they both get out there and play in a preseason game or two, and our eyes will tell us, we can see that Richardson's either a lot more accurate or he's still throwing balls in the dirt or sailing over either the receiver's head, or Jones is the same way. Although everything I've read, Jones will not have a bad off-season training camp. That's just not the way he is. The way he plays and practices, he'll have strong performance. This is all on Richardson. It is, and I hope that it works because I don't like the alternative, but it's all on Richardson. It really is.
Chap, did he offer any insight? Mike Chappell's our guest from CBS 4 and WXIN Fox 59. Chris Ballard speaking earlier today, NFL draft coming up to end the week. Did he offer any insight as to the, somewhat peculiar move of releasing Matt Gay, and in particular the timing of the release of Matt Gay?
Not the timing. He just said that it was almost more a reflection on, and I've included that in my story, it's a reflection of Spencer Schrader and what he's shown more than Matt Gay, which I don't totally buy that because Spencer Schrader's kicked the ball 5 times, field goals 5 times in last season for 2 teams. And he may very well have a strong career, but this so much, it just, everything points to the fact that they couldn't go forward. And the money matters, I guess. They save $2.5 million against the cap and all this, but they just couldn't have a kicker that was 3 of 9. And remember the 4 50-yarders against Baltimore that won the game. Cincinnati is like 7 of 18 on 50-yarders at a time when everybody else is, in the league is kicking 70%. I just think that was such a detriment to the offense and how Shane Steichen calls plays around midfield. Although, again, and if you showered on Matt Gay, which they obviously did, you have no idea Spencer Schrader is the answer.
Right.
He kicked a 56-yarder against the Bengals in the preseason, and that's it. That's his only 50-yarder. So we'll see, but it's competition, and they'll bring in another kicker because they always have 2 kickers. But yeah, that was all that he said. It was more about Spencer Schrader, and it was another case of they're not going to trash Matt Gay on the way out the door. But there's question there too, because the sample size on Spencer Schrader is not very deep, and maybe you don't have trust on him in October on 50-yarders. But I think they were going to go on what they don't know and what they hope for, as opposed to what they've seen for the last 2 years with Matt Gay on long distance kicks.
Okay, Chap, last question. It's the most important of all. You ready?
Ready.
Give me 2 answers here.
Okay.
The first is the number of people you think actually will be there, and the second is the number of people the NFL announces attend the draft in Green Bay.
The number of people, you mean the players?
No. The attendees, the attendance of the NFL draft.
Oh, gosh. 15,000? What do you think?
Well, last year the NFL said 700,000 people attended in Detroit. So,
Yeah.
so I'd like to know the number you think actually will be there, and then the number that the NFL will announce.
Well, now Green Bay's different. They'll have. I don't know. It's a small town, so how they're gonna. I don't know how you have people flowing out in all the different places and all that. They'll have 20 or 30,000 people, and to say you've got more than that, I mean, one of these years, and it's going to happen. One of these years soon, Indy's going to have it. They will. And boy, to say you're going to have 100,000 people downtown, I just don't. Can't really. I mean, maybe I'm way wrong.
No, I'm with you. I mean, this has been a source of my mockery for like 3 years now because every year it gets bigger. Like in Nashville when they said there were 600,000 people there, and I'm like, who are we? Do people realize how many people that is?
That's right.
I mean, here's the thing, chap. It's the number of people that they get to come to the draft is unbelievably impressive and a fabulous testament to the popularity and influence of the NFL. So why lie about it, right?
Well, I could get a bunch of buses and take the population of Beech Grove, and would have about 20,000 people, and it would look like a hell of a lot of people.
Correct. I mean, what I've always said is this: we have tangible proof in the city of Indianapolis that if you take people 120 deep and shoulder to shoulder and wrap them around for 2.5 miles, you get 220,000 people, right?
I know. Yep.
So like in an 8-block area, you ain't getting 500,000. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's more than just NFL. Everyone seems to be wanting to inflate the size.
Oh, I know. It's unbelievable.
Why do you need to do that? I understand, but again, I'd like to see what our city says when again next 2 or 3 or 4 years we have it here, because you'll have people. That means you're going to have people like on Michigan Avenue, 30 or 40 some deep.
Correct.
So you don't need to do that because it'll be a great event and all this stuff. But they will. You're right. And you got to do better than the year before, or you're not doing your job.
That's right. All right, chap. All the coverage. I know that you'll be having it. You'll be covering all of it from CBS4 WXIN, and as always, appreciate your time today. Draft getting underway on Thursday with round number 1, and then Thursday, Friday, and throughout the course of the weekend. Appreciate it as always, chap.
You guys be well.
All right, Mike Chappell joining us on the program. We come back. I have a question about NFL rosters, Eddie. That's one that I am convinced there are 2 answers that are the most obvious, but it might not be the 2 that you think of. We'll discuss, and I'll give you my brain-dropping question next. Okay, as we get set for the NFL draft, one of the things that I've always found interesting about just sports in general, especially in football and baseball. Now, Eddie, you played baseball as a kid, right?
Yes, sir.
For the most part, when you were, and you actually help out and coach and like train kids in baseball, correct?
I don't anymore, but I used to,
Okay.
for a long time.
And I know that now it is a much, much, much different youth game than it once was because of travel ball and year-round baseball and clinics and academies and all of that. I understand all that.
Yep.
Having said that, in your area of expertise in this, in your opinion, what age is the age where you truly can start to see the separation of players that are going to be able to play beyond just enjoyment baseball and into higher level high school or college baseball? What age can you start to see that separation?
I would probably say that transition from your freshman to sophomore year of high school.
Okay.
Most of the time you probably can so early on as a freshman, but most boys haven't gone through puberty and you haven't started
That's the ultimate
weightlifting and all that.
act for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, now, if you are looking at kids that are the best player on the team between the ages of 10 to 12, so the kid that is advanced maybe or gone through puberty before his peers, etc., more often than not at the little league baseball level, that player that is the best athlete or the most mature or the most physical on the team is playing what position?
Shortstop.
Okay.
Or pitcher.
Correct. Pitcher. Right.
And or both.
Okay. In football, more often than not, that kid, so the kid that is the pitcher or the shortstop in the baseball position, if he is playing football in the fall, he is most likely being immediately tried or getting a look at what position?
Quarterback.
Correct. Right? So, more often than not, the kid that is the best athlete amongst his peers at a young age is the quarterback or the pitcher in the two respective sports. I think you would find in the NFL, if you were to take every player on an NFL roster and you were to have them write down every position they played in football growing up, what position is the one that, number one, would be most likely answered? I think, personally, the highest percentage of players you would find at some point in their career played quarterback.
Now, is this high school speak? Like
at any point in their career. So, in other words, you Jalen Carlisle, who's a linebacker that last year they drafted out of Missouri, and that's who Mike Chappell was referencing that the Colts speak highly of. I would bet you, he's 6'3" and 225 today.
Yeah.
I would bet you at some point when he first started playing football, if you were to ask him, write down every position you played in football from the time you first put on a helmet to now. At some point, yes, it would even out where it's like linebacker, 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 linebacker. But in his early years, I'll bet he would put down, well, I played quarterback in 5th grade, and then they put me at fullback in 6th grade, and then I also played linebacker. And eventually they realized how good I was at linebacker, so that's all I played from 9th grade to, whatever. A lot of the receivers, I think you would find, a lot of NFL rosters, when you look at it, they have what's called the emergency quarterback. Pat McAfee, for example, was the Colts' emergency quarterback because he had played it at some point, and they're like, okay, if we get into a crunch and we need, just like in baseball, when a team gets down 18-0 in the 9th inning and they've gone through all their pitchers and they bring out a center fielder or a shortstop that played pitcher at some point in their career.
Did you see what the Reds did to the Orioles yesterday, Jake? Oh, boy.
They
Did you see
scored
that?
3 touchdowns and a field goal, right?
Yeah, uh-huh.
For a team that went 24 innings without scoring a run, they dropped 24 of them in one game against Cute Fella.
I know.
So here's my question for you, having said all of that is the lead in here.
Got
okay?
2 position players pitched in that game for Baltimore.
That's what I mean. And they probably said, okay, who's somebody here at college or high school or whatever that pitched. Now, so here's my question from an NFL standpoint that I thought about last night, 2:38 in the morning.
Okay.
I believe there are 2 definitive answers. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
What are the 2 positions in the National Football League that are the hardest to replace on your roster amongst players on your roster currently. If your starting guy or the guy that is designed to do it goes down, and you've got to go throughout the course of your roster and take somebody from a different position to slide in, what are the two positions where you would most notice the drop-off because it would be the hardest to find somebody that can fill in and immediately do it well?
Are we eliminating the obvious one here of quarterback?
Quarterback, you have a backup.
I know, but he's still theoretically a backup for a reason. He's not going to
But
do
you
the
have a
job
guy
as
that
well.
knows how to play the quarterback position. If Anthony Richardson gets hurt, Daniel Jones can play quarterback.
Right.
What is the position that the fewest number of guys, if you walked through the Colts locker room right now with a list of every position on the NFL roster, and you said, circle the one that you've never attempted, what is the one that would get the highest number of votes? What position?
Probably one of the offensive line positions.
Think so?
Yeah, because most of your receivers, your corners,
But if they were
linebackers,
here's the thing.
running
If they were
backs
the biggest kid in school,
are hardly ever playing offensive line.
in like sixth grade they are, though. Like in
Maybe.
youth football, in youth football, a lot, if you're the biggest kid, if you're Jalen Carlisle, for example, you're the biggest kid. And at the youth football league, and I don't know if it's still the case, they used to have what was called a striper. If you were a certain height and weight, they put a stripe on your helmet, and you had to play offensive line because you weren't allowed to carry the football. So I think there are a lot of guys in the specialty positions that when they were younger were so much bigger than their peers, they were playing the line at least once for a year. But that's a good one. There is one that I think is the runaway winner. The runaway winner, and it's the easiest to forget.
Yeah, I know where you're going here.
Go ahead.
Long snapper.
Yes. If you want your kid to get a scholarship, or if you want your kid to play in the pros, all these people that are out there and they're working on their kids' footwork and they're working on throwing a football through a tire and they're working on shuttle drills and high jump and long jump and everything else, go out right now and do nothing but put a target on the wall and have your kid bend over from 10 feet away and just snap a ball between his legs and hit the damn thing and have him practice it for – how many people can do it? Long snapper has to be the most specialized position in the NFL. Matt Overton, great dude. Matt Overton's a great dude. And when he was playing for the Colts, and even after, because he stayed in Indy for quite a while, he went to the gym I went to. And I would sit there on the treadmill and watch, and Matt Overton was doing nothing but like unusual stretch and strength drills. That dude was totally committed towards perfecting his craft as a long snapper. And you never, when he walked through, would think to yourself, that's an NFL player. But he did what he did as well as anybody in the league. And in addition to that, he extended his career because he basically now hangs out, stays in shape. And I mean, even last year, I think it was the Jaguars. I'm looking on the sidelines, and I'm like, they just signed Matt Overton this week because their long snapper got hurt, and they didn't have anybody else on the roster. So they got to pluck a guy out of Lifetime Fitness and bring him back in, and there you go. You snap for a couple games, back to drinking smoothies and working out. I think long snapper be one. There's one other one I had in mind here. And this one's a little bit of a curveball because there's at least one other player on the roster that could probably do it. But I think it might be punter, right?
Place kicking, I think, would be the more challenging of the two.
Yeah, although today I think you have a higher percentage of players that played soccer at some point growing up.
I mean, how many quarterbacks could punt? Because in high school, you're
That's true.
doing the pooch
There
punt.
probably are a lot of – it is interesting when you see the number of players that are dynamic athletes that you find out also punted in high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Long snapper, though, I'm telling you, you have a smirk on your face. I can always tell. Somebody sends you something quirky, and I can always tell.
No, I'm still laughing at your comment.
You're the world's worst poker player, for what it's worth. Pacers game 1, they got it against the Bucks, but what has to happen in game number 2? Something that did happen in game number 1 at the outset that I looked at and said, if that happens every game, then break out the brooms. It probably is not going to, but something important for Indiana next. Let me tell you where the Milwaukee Bucks aired. I don't mean aired A-I-R-E-D. They aired on ESPN in game number 1. Michael Grady was on the call for that with Stephanie White. We had Stephanie on Friday. We'll have Michael on here about 15 minutes from now. But where they aired E-R-R-E-D is that's kind of fun to say. E-R-R-E-D. Doesn't that sound like some sort of, I don't know, like a Schoolhouse Rock or something?
Yeah, it does, kind of.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where they were erroneous, at least for the time being, and I don't know this, but I would imagine that people up in Milwaukee are probably screaming this from the lakeside to the brewery tops, and that is the disappointment in trading away Chris Middleton for Kyle Kuzma. And I don't mean to sit here and totally pick on Kyle Kuzma because he's kind of an easy target. But
2025, Jake.
I mean,
25.
He is, listen, if you have any doubt that guy's a 2025 guy or a 048 guy, right?
Yeah. He's got a ring somehow, Jake. I don't know.
This is unbelievable. And I know that plenty has been made of this, okay? This is unbelievable. Kyle Kuzma, 22 minutes played. 0 for 5 from the floor, 0 for 2 from three-point range, 0 for 2 from the free throw line, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks, and 0 turnovers. If it weren't for the fact that he committed 2 fouls, he would have had a clean sweep. It truly is remarkable. Now, Doc Rivers had said part of that is because they didn't incorporate him enough within the offense. And yes, Milwaukee's ball movement was not great. Giannis was very ball dominant, and I get why. I mean, 36 and 12 boards, and he did not shoot it well from the free throw line, but outside of that, he is, and look, I understand it. I know from a fan standpoint, there are a lot of things about Giannis that people want to roll their eyes at, but he is a tremendous talent. I mean, he is a potentially game-changing player. But what happened in game number 1 was the ball was going through Giannis, and he was not facilitating like he has in the 15 games where Damian Lillard, 15 of them, where Damian Lillard has not played. What Indiana did was the following from the get-go right off the top. So I'm sitting there. The game's about to start. It was an awesome atmosphere. It was kind of weird playing at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, it just was.
I did notice, Jake, you did put on the shirt that was on your jersey. Now, we need to have a word with Shannon. Like, what are we doing here, Shannon? You're in light of cameras, and you're supposed to be part of this fan base, and everyone else is putting the shirt on. Why aren't you putting the shirt on, Shannon?
Do you want to call and ask her why she's not putting? I don't know.
No, it's not that big of a deal.
She and her, I believe the other two with her didn't put theirs on either. I don't know why she didn't put on the gold shirt. I put mine on.
Well,
and
here's the thing.
I had on my greatest of all time T-shirt that says Miller, McGinnis. It's a cool shirt. Davis, Kellogg. It's a cool shirt.
Now, here's the thing, Jake. Since she did not put the shirt on in game 1, she cannot put the shirt on in game 2.
I do know this.
If they are giving out shirts again.
Now, why can she not in game 2?
Because, Jake, they dominated in game 1.
Excellent point.
And
excellent
she didn't
point.
put it on.
Superstition.
Yes.
She did take the shirt home to give it to her niece. I do know that much. But the game starts and everybody, 22,000 people there or whatever, 19,997 are wearing their shirt. And Miles Turner hits the 3 right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Crowd erupts, and you're like, all right, here we go. And then, Milwaukee actually hits a couple shots, takes a lead, and you're thinking, okay, this could be a challenge here. What happened next, I think, was what set the tone of the game. And that is that Andrew Nembhard hit 3 of the Pacers' next 4 shots. Andrew Nembhard was offensively aggressive. He is a very good mid-range player. But his ability to drive to the basket, he has an unbelievable body control of driving to the basket. It's like he can stop his body in midair and like recontort and hit layups. I mean, it really is. He's a very sound player and only if you played, and I hate to sound like this guy, this is one of those comments that you had to have played basketball to know what I'm talking about when I say this. He has a very good understanding at all times of where he is in relation to the basket. And that sounds weird, except for that if you've played basketball and you get down onto the block, or if you have your head down, or you're navigating through a screen or whatever else, and you are driving to the basket, oftentimes when you look up, you find that you are deeper in than where you thought. Or you're even maybe like underneath the basket, and you're like, oh, man, I've now interrupted my angle towards getting a shot. He has a very good awareness at all times of where the basket is. But what I'm getting at is Andrew Nembhard, if he is offensively aggressive, Nembhard is an outstanding defender and a very good mid-range scorer. I'm talking about typically within the flow of their offense. But for a guy that is listed as shooting guard, more often than not, he is basically a rotator and facilitator offensively. And I think teams kind of back off of him a little bit. And then when they back off of him a little bit, that makes it more difficult to then cycle the ball through, whether it be to Neesmith in the corner or Halliburton up top, Toppin if he's on the floor in the corner. When Nembhard immediately at the beginning of the game is aggressive like that and plants it in the mind of the defense that you're going against, then all of a sudden they're now on their heels. And you throw in the fact that Turner hits an early three and sets that stage. Now you don't know whether to fall back, rim protect, go out, three-point protect. And I think Milwaukee was completely off kilter and on roller skates for the better part of that game defensively. And that just facilitated and allowed. Rick Carlisle had talked about how he wanted to see transition defense be something that Indiana really had, that was what they would set the tone with. And I think their transition defense, as much as anything else, was basically just set in the fact that Milwaukee didn't know whether they needed to run or fall back because they didn't know which way Indiana was playing offensively. And I think that the entire course of the game, they had the Bucks guessing.
I thought going into it, down the later stretches of the regular season when we started the debate of Detroit or Milwaukee, which one do you want? I thought that first half was the reason why I wanted Milwaukee over Detroit, because I think Detroit can run with Indiana. I don't think Milwaukee can, and you notice that right from the get-go in that first half. The Pacers were moving it up and down the court with the pace that they want to play at, and Milwaukee just was not getting back in time because they have a bunch of bigger dudes that aren't as agile and that aren't as quick to get back. And you noticed it a little bit in the rebounding, too, in the second half. Milwaukee stopped going after offensive rebounds, and next thing you know, you see the Pacers down there in the paint with 3 or 4 guys and one Buck player because the other 4 are getting back on defense to slow down the Pacers' offense. Now it'll be interesting to see how they combat that at game number 2, because you would probably expect Milwaukee to do the same thing.
And I am sure of this. I don't know this. I've not been told this. I mean, why would I know this? But I believe I can tell you this. I think Indiana is preparing for game 2 as if Damian Lillard is going to play. I think they are fully expecting that Damian Lillard is going to play. And how does that then change what Milwaukee wants to do? Well, number one, it gives them a better scoring option from the outside. But number 2, it does take the ball out of Giannis's hands. And I think it gives them a vulnerability defensively on the perimeter that the Pacers can exploit. Damian Lillard is a tremendous basketball player. He's one of the best players in the NBA and has been for the totality of his career. But because he has missed 14 games, 15 now if you include the postseason, there's an acclimation period, as great as he is, towards coming back in. And does that mean that it takes them a while to get going? And is that advantage Indiana in game 2? That's one of the things we'll discuss with Michael Grady next. Carlisle tomorrow morning show here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Pacers up 1-0 on the Milwaukee Bucks. Game 2 tomorrow night at the Fieldhouse. The guy that was on the call for ESPN in game number 1, and at one point probably felt like when somebody was shooting 2 free throws, he needed to look up to Turner's block and remind them to do the Tua, because it was a familiar setting for him. The pride of Warren Central High School, Michael Grady, joining us on the program. Michael, I'll get right to this in game 1. I thought that game was as much about Indiana's offensive aggressiveness early that kind of put Milwaukee on their heels a little bit as much as anything else. But your overall takeaway in terms of an adjustment Milwaukee might need to do for game number 2?
I thought it was really the defense that set the tone for Indiana, Jake, and it's good to be on with you. I feel like the Bucks came in on an 8-game winning streak, was playing confident basketball, even without Damian Lillard. And Giannis had turned into a Jokic type. He was not only aggressive in looking for his shot, but he was facilitating for his teammates. He was averaging a triple-double in the month of April. And so to leave that game with only 1 assist says something about the defense approach that the Pacers had in the ball game, the swarming defense that they had, and the way they just took guys completely out of the game. And so for Kyle Kuzma to have a quintuple goose egg, for Taurean Prince, who was top 10 in the NBA in three-point field goal percentage, to only have 1 shot attempt in the entire ball game, which he missed, for Portis to not really find any kind of a rhythm. It just really says something about, again, the defensive scheme that Indiana had, that, okay, Giannis is going to get his. We can't do anything about that. But if we can limit the players around him and keep those folks from gaining confidence, because that's what's fueled Milwaukee during their winning streak down the stretch, then they were going to have an opportunity in that ball game. The fact that they were clicking offensively is a byproduct of just the way that Indiana plays, and Milwaukee just lost confidence. I thought it was a part of the arena, the crowd impact in the ball game. And once Indiana started to pile and pour it on, you could see the confidence continue to grow. And even though Milwaukee had many runs, you just couldn't see the Bucks pulling out game 1.
Michael, I thought in game 1, an interesting thing to think about heading into game 2, and you'd be a good person to ask because, in doing play-by-play for the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are up 1-0 on the Lakers, and then doing the occasional, ESPN and other national games, you get to see a wide array and prepare for a wide number of games of different franchises. So with that background and perspective, assuming that, and I assume that he does, assuming that Damian Lillard comes back for game number 2, he missed 15 games. He's an all-league level player, it goes without saying. In your observation or experience, how long do you think it takes a player of that experience to reacclimate in with then a seamless flow when coming back to a team after missing 15 games?
The unique thing about that, Jake, is, when guys typically have an injury, whether it's a wrist injury, you can still do cardio. If you have a leg injury, you may not be able to run as much, but you can still do other things in terms of shooting motion, may not get as much lift. You're not doing as much contact. But in many cases, when we talk about your typical NBA injury, you're able to do something out there on the court. There's always going to be a ramp up once you're fully cleared for full contact. There's going to be ramp up to get your conditioning and get your timing. The unique thing about a blood clot is you can't do anything.
Right.
Nothing. And so you're going for nothing for the better part of 2 weeks to now a ramp up and trying to find, your rhythm, get your conditioning right. And you're doing so in the midst of a playoff series. So that is a real challenge. Now, Damian Lillard is one of the all-time greats. He is as competitive as they come, and I think folks could obviously see that in his trash talk and his back and forth with Tyrese Halliburton in the game on Sunday. But still, it's going to take some time to find that rhythm. And if the Pacers are playing the swarming defense that we saw in game 1, that could elongate how long it'll take for Damian Lillard to find his groove. And so it's really hard to finger point how long it would take for him to get into a rhythm and get into the flow of a playoff series. But it is going to be a real challenge. You can't just snap your fingers and say, oh, because Damian Lillard is out there, everything is going to be okay. Now, one of the things that could work in Milwaukee's favor is that even a 75% Damian Lillard is going to attract a lot of attention. And so that could set up shots and looks for other guys on the floor if they can find their confidence, which they did not have at all in game one.
Yeah, I think the one thing, because I agree, Michael. I mean, Michael Grady, our guest, Damian Lillard, it goes without saying. I call them lightning in a bottle guys, right? He's a guy that he can go 3/4 of a game without even hitting a field goal. And you're saying to yourself, do not put him on the free throw line because let's not get him in rhythm here, right? Because he can score him in a flurry. But even with that, it feels to me like if he is playing in game 2, and maybe even for a couple of games, that he would be a defensive liability for them and that Indiana can exploit that. Now, is that me not giving him enough credit?
No, again, we're talking about going 2 weeks plus with nothing to now playing against one of the high-paced teams in the NBA in Indiana. And so, yes, I'm going pedal to the metal if I'm Indiana against Damian Lillard when he's playing his first basketball game in a while. So, no, I like that from Milwaukee's perspective. And you just said it. Dame is one of the best at drawing fouls, and so that's something he would try to work in his favor and try to pull out any trick in his tool bag to try to get himself in a flow. And he's done that over the course of his career and trying to draw fouls, get to the free throw line, allowing that to get himself into a rhythm. But on the flip side, 100%, get your track shoes ready, Damian Lillard. If you're coming back, then we're going to test your conditioning from the opening tip.
Michael, I realize obviously that you don't see the Pacers game in and game out. I mean, you have responsibilities with the Timberwolves. Obviously, you would keep more of an eye on Indiana than you would most franchises because of your history with them. Having said that, was there anybody in game 1 or through this playoff that relatively surprised you from the Pacers standpoint, either because of their contribution and what they may be able to do in this series, either matchup-wise, or maybe one that you expected more of that now you realize Milwaukee might be able to take away?
No, it's hard to say that through game one. In terms of your X factors, I think the role players in general all have to play well. You're not going to go far in the playoffs, obviously, if your stars don't play at a high level. So your Tyrese Halliburton's going to have to be efficient and take care of the basketball. Pascal Siakam is going to have to be consistent in this series, and Miles Turner is going to have to get the job done on both ends of the floor. The last regular season loss to Milwaukee, the starters played terrific in Milwaukee, but the second unit did not play well in that game and cost them the ball game, honestly. And I think they all would acknowledge that. And so in order to beat Milwaukee, everybody's going to have to play at a high level. And I'm just a big fan of Andrew Nembhard. For the moment he stepped on the court for the first time for Indiana, he just showed stones that you don't really see, in a young player. He has the utmost confidence in his game. He's not afraid to take big shots. And as defenses try to take away a Halliburton, try to suffocate a Pascal Siakam, or try to limit a Miles Turner, there's going to be opportunities for not just Nembhard, but Neesmith as well. They're going to get open looks that they just have to knock down. And so I look at those guys. TJ McConnell, I'm never worried about TJ McConnell. But Neesmith and Nembhard are two guys that I really like their game. They're going to get open looks because of the attention the other guys are going to get, and they have to be able to knock their shots down.
I think Nembhard, I said this earlier, Michael, and it took me a while to have this epiphany, and you tell me if this makes sense in what I'm trying to illustrate here. He has an unbelievable body control. Like Andrew Nembhard is like a Barry Sanders of guards. In other words, when he penetrates to the basket or has to stop and immediately pull up, he just seemingly always has a very good control of contorting himself towards getting an open look, usually like one half or a step beyond where you think that he actually would be coming to a dead stop, and that's what makes him dangerous. Does what I'm saying make sense in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, and an extension of that is I like guys who play at their pace. You can't speed them up. They rarely look like they're panicking out there on the basketball court. And so even while in midair, if you try to take something away, as you mentioned, he's able to contort his body to make something out of nothing. Now, you don't want to continue to play with fire, but I really appreciate the fact that even in a shot clock winding down situation, you look at his body language, you just don't see panic and the way he approaches making a play, even with seconds winding down on the clock. And so I like those kind of guys. I think you just feel calm around guys like that.
Michael, I've always the guys that I like in the NBA, and I don't know who these guys would be from Minnesota, for example, but I call them non-design guys. So guys that get you 12 to 14 a night, but you don't have to design plays to go through them. They just kind of find opportunity where, like, the shot clock's running down or the ball has to rotate through. Nembhard is one of those guys for certain. And, Kuzma would be that kind of for Milwaukee, but yet obviously whether it was the thumb, he just didn't deliver for them. Milwaukee didn't get it from their non-design guys. That's what I like about Nembhard is you don't feel like you have to do things for him. He just kind of figures it out on his own. You know what I mean?
And I think the ultimate compliment for guys like that is when you scroll on social media and you see their highlights and you see people saying, man, in another system, this guy could average 20 and 8.
Right.
And in this system, he's not asked to do that. And as you mentioned, they're not necessarily drawing up plays for him, but he just finds ways to be effective. And you can't have enough selfless guys on your roster, especially when you have star power already. Halliburton's going to get his. Siakam's going to get his. Turner is going to get his. You're not necessarily drawing up plays, for Andrew Nembhard, but the way he goes about with extra effort, hustle, getting out in transition, handed a grenade with the shot clock winding down and still finding a way to make a play and not complaining, going about his business and doing whatever the team is asking of him. Those guys are invaluable when you're talking about a team that has high aspirations when it comes to postseason play.
Is it kind of surreal to be in the building on the opposite sideline with the headset on, knowing that habitually what you did on the microphone for Gainbridge Fieldhouse for so long, and obviously working at the radio station, but being an Indy native, is it still? Do you all of a sudden have to stop yourself from doing the other job?
I don't have to stop myself. I think it was an emotional weekend, for me. And when ESPN gave me the assignment, I remember thinking, oh, this is really cool. And as the days got closer, and then when I flew in and made the drive in to Indianapolis, and went straight to my childhood home where my sister lives now. It was an emotional, drive in, and just thinking about the journey. And I've been in a real reflective space lately with all the things that have been happening. It's just special. I was a little kid, just like many of your listeners, cheering on Reggie Miller. Time has gone by. There's listeners now who grew up watching Paul George, for crying out loud. But I grew up, 6 inches from the television. My mom telling me to back up as I'm watching Reggie Miller knock down big shots against, Michael Jordan and the Bulls in 1998, or against the Knicks in 94 and 1995, and jumping up and down in my tube socks and can't believe what I'm seeing, and television turned down and got Mark Boyle turned up, and then to have an opportunity to work with Mark Boyle on the radio doing pregame stuff, and then an opportunity to be the MC and then PA announcer for the Pacers. And I've been asked along my journey, whether it was when I first got to New York as a sideline reporter, are you nervous? Or when I got to Minnesota and took over as play-by-play, are you nervous? And my response is always, and I start with this, I replaced Reb Porter as PA announcer for the Pacers, and Reb was a legend. And nothing will match the nerves that I had when I sat in that seat for the first time after Reb retired. Nothing will match those nerves, wondering, will this crowd accept me? Will this crowd embrace me? Can I come up with some things that this crowd base, this fan base loves and appreciates, and that's memorable and that can carry on for game after game and year after year? Nothing will match the nerves that I had in that situation. So going to New York was nothing. Coming here to Minnesota was nothing. Growing up in Indiana, knowing how much basketball means to this community and being able to step in the seats that I was fortunate enough to step into, nothing will replace, match, or contend with that. So I still have so much love and respect and admiration for my journey and the people who are supportive who've been supportive of me along my journey, who didn't put a cap on what I was capable of along this journey. And Indianapolis will always be home, and that's why it was such an emotional weekend.
How many seasons did you do the the public address when you took over for Reb?
I space off the top of my head. What I always say is Paul George's rookie year was my first year on the PA mic, and then when Paul George's last year was my last year. So my run during PA was during Paul George's run, which was a glorious run. 2 Eastern Conference Finals, 3 straight playoffs against LeBron, D Wade, and the Miami Heat. I believe during that stretch was when we saw a gold out for the first time, which is always electric and gives me goosebumps every time I see it. I know the Warriors do it too, but no, it's Indiana. So that was the run that I had, and then the 2 years prior to when I first got the PA mic, I was an MC for the team.
So you and Paul George were a package deal. Is that what this comes down to?
I wouldn't say that.
Paul George is like, listen, if Michael Grady's not doing the public address, I'm out, right?
No.
Trade me. Enough softball, trade me, right?
Breaking news.
That's right.
New wrinkle to the Paul
That's right.
George's tenure with Indiana. No.
Hey, Michael, I thought
No.
Rick Carlisle did a really good job. Michael Grady, our guest, I thought he did a really good job of kind of rotating people through on Giannis and not because I was worried, for example, that Miles Turner would get himself into foul trouble and, that would change things. It seemed like they were constantly putting different people sliding over, whether it be Siakam. For that matter, there were times where I thought Jarris Walker put body on that was pretty effective. Are they going to be able to, I guess, maintain or sustain that level of being able to give that kind of attention to Giannis for remainder of the series?
Well, one thing we have to keep in mind is that's by necessity. Giannis, who I'm going to blame for me missing my flight to Los Angeles, shoots too many damn free throws. He gets in attack mode, gets downhill, and it's a credit to him. I'm not slighting him. He's impossible to defend, and so this is somewhat by necessity that you have to put multiple bodies on him. You can't give him a heavy dose of Miles Turner because Miles Turner, will get in foul trouble. You can't give him a heavy dose of Siakam because of the same thing. So yes, you have to mix it up. You have to throw different guys at him because inevitably he's going to find his way to the free throw line. So you have to do that. And fortunately for Indiana, he was missing his free throws. And also fortunate, and this is because of the job that Indiana did on the other guys, they limited everybody else. And so Giannis is, again, as I mentioned to start our conversation, he's been really good at driving and setting up his teammates and playing the point guard role for Doc Rivers. And so the fact that they were able to limit everybody else and, okay, Giannis, you can get what you want. You can get what you want, but good luck keeping up with our offense and what we're going to do on the other end. If you're going 50% at the free throw line and we're out here knocking down threes, that's the luck in this 7-game series.
Where's the place you had to go other than your childhood home where your sister lives when you were in Indy?
I didn't have a lot of time on this trip, so I spent a little bit of time with my sister, and then we had a little broadcast team dinner over at Harry and Izzy's. Saw my favorite waitress Tina over at Bruce Chris, and then it was time to get some rest and wake up in the morning, do the game, and then head back to the airport to get out of here. I was able to spend a week in town when the Timberwolves played the Pacers a handful of weeks back, and so that was great, and able to catch up with family. I still have a lot of family here, obviously friends here, and extended family. I feel like everybody who listened to the radio show for the 8 years that I was doing it, I grew up on the Fan. I grew up on that frequency. I tell the story that my mom would take me to the bus stop and we would have 1070 WIBC on, and I would listen to Jeff Pigeon and Terry Stacey every morning. And so to get out of college and then be able to work on that frequency, even when it transitioned to the Fan, and now I don't even know what I don't know where we are on the frequency part now, but nevertheless, it was really special to me. So there are people who, when I first started with WIBC in 2003, who remember those days, and of course remember me from my time with Bob Lovell and Indiana Sports Talk, and he was without a doubt my biggest advocate and fan, and I'll always love him for that because he gave me a lot of confidence in my early days when nobody knew who I was. But I really feel like it's an extended family with everybody who's been listening from day one from me.
If it makes you feel any better, Michael, 3 times a week somebody comes up to me and goes, "Hear you all the time on 1070." I'm like, well, it's actually been 107.5 and 93.5 for a couple of years now, but that's okay, right? I mean, 1070 snow, but that's cool. By the way, Timberwolves and Pacers both scored 117 points in game number 1. Before we let you go, T-Wolves jumping out 1-0 lead on the Lakers. Overall observation on that and what needs to be maintained for Minnesota to be able to pull off what, at least numerically, would be a first-round upset.
They just have to play harder than the Lakers. They're every bit as good as LA. They showed that in game 1. They benefited from hot shooting from three-point range. That's not necessarily going to continue. Luka is going to play better. Austin Reeves is going to play better. Rui Hachimura is going to play better. But if the Timberwolves can play harder, which has nothing to do with skill, they're going to have every opportunity to upset this Lakers squad. Anthony Edwards, he's one of those guys that when he smells blood, he goes in for the kill. He's just built different. It's one of the things that attracted me about Minnesota when coming over here because he has this audacity about him that is reminiscent of Reggie Miller with Indiana. Small market, and you have a big personality who loves to talk trash. That really was appealing to me.
Did they have
over to Minnesota?
Michael, did they have to kind of learn how to play as now more a hunter, or like a hunted than a hunter? After last year's obviously run, do you think it took a little bit for them this year at the beginning of the year to kind of just readjust with the expectation?
Yeah, and it's all a part of the journey because this is still a relative. I know they have veterans on the roster, but still kind of a young team. And you have to go through this journey together and all the peaks and valleys that come with it. So quickly last year, for example, to your point, they got to the Western Conference Finals. They love being an underdog. They relish coming into your house and smacking you in the mouth when nobody expected them to. And so in the first round, they were faced off against Phoenix, didn't win a single game during the regular season against the Suns, and then swept the Suns in the first round. Knocked out the defending champion Denver Nuggets in the second round. And now all of a sudden, you have home court advantage in the conference finals against the Mavericks. You're no longer the underdog anymore. You're the favorite. You're supposed to beat Luka Doncic and the Mavericks with home court advantage. And they fell apart. Mentally, that was just a different scenario for them. So this season coming in as the hunted, I still think they really struggled with that. I think their best stretches this season were when teams counted them out. And they still love being the underdog. And so it'll be very interesting in this series, especially if they're able to take a commanding lead in this series, if they're able to maintain that edge, even when people predict that they're going to win the series.
Any other Pacer games for you, Michael, or was that it now because of the Timberwolves' responsibilities?
That is it. I won't have any more. I don't believe I'll have any more for the Pacers. But I'll be watching, and I'll be locked in, and I'll be looking forward to watching Game 2 tomorrow. I think it's going to be a great series. It'll be fascinating as you brought up when Damian Lillard comes back, what that looks like. But I think a playoff series when you have two division rivals adds a different level of animosity that I'm excited to see unfold.
Did you go into that broadcast on Saturday with the anticipation of dropping the trifecta at some point? Because I know that was one of your key things when you're PA announcing.
Yes, and so I wanted to get that in. I had forgotten to do it when I had the Paris game with Indiana and San Antonio. Another thing that I was hoping to do, although I know he would have killed me for it, I've been doing it for Minnesota games. Mark Boyle is on my Mount Rushmore. He's been one of my North Stars when it comes to this business. He's given me so much advice from when I was, came in the door at WIBC when I was 20 years old. And so I told him as a tip of the cap to him for Minnesota games, I use count it and put them on the line. And I'll also use employee number. Those are kind of the two things that I'll use. And so I don't think Indiana had an and one the entire game. but I had counted and put him on the line in the bullpen, which I know that Boyle would have called me out on, but I still wanted to do it and use it as a tip of the cap to him. But I definitely had trifecta ready to go for those who remember that call during my time as PA.
Interesting that Indiana native Michael Grady would be on the television mic for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota native Mark Boyle would be on the radio mic for the Indiana Pacers. A very, I guess, incestuous business, so to speak, when it comes to the travels that take place. Michael, appreciate it as always. Nice job in game number 1. Enjoy game number 2 between the Wolves and Lakers and the rest of the playoffs as well.
Good to catch up with you, Jake. Take care.
I appreciate it. Michael Grady joining us on the program. We come back. There was something that was just said, speaking of the Dallas Mavericks. Just be glad, by the way, if you are somebody that has an organization that you feel like you don't like the way management or ownership or whatever it may be treats your favorite team, your favorite player, be glad you're not in Dallas. Something was just said that I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'll tell you what it is next. Australians may swing by the studio.
Are they bringing Tam Tams?
Yeah, they did bring Tim Tams.
Yes.
Do you want regular chocolate or white chocolate?
Doesn't matter. Those things are delicious.
They are very good. Brought that as well as the Vegemite Australian shaped chips.
Oh, that's right.
So I think tomorrow they're going to swing by before the game. We have dinner tonight, and then tomorrow, obviously, the game. I want to make sure that I've got this straight. The Dallas Mavericks, in their trade of Luka Doncic, I mean, much has been made of that. And we had Mac Engel on last week, and he was talking about how the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks,
Nico Harrison,
apparently, Mac, I thought, offered outstanding insight into what he perceived as the reasoning that Luka Doncic was traded. And what he was saying was that Nico Harrison had been working with Nike. He was the vice president of basketball operations for Nike. And in that capacity, he was around the Nike travel circuits and AAU and all of those things, and therefore had I'm not going to say favoritism towards that, but that ingrained him into the American basketball ladder series and just the way that things are done. And that in that capacity, perhaps he just did not have a total grasp of Luka Doncic and Doncic's playing style, etc. And so when he traded Luka Doncic, Mac was saying that it was Mac's opinion that he thought Luka Doncic was lazy or out of shape, but more so that he thought that Luka Doncic's physical, just his physique and his weight were going to make him very vulnerable towards a big-time injury. And isn't it ironic that he would trade him then for Anthony Davis, who after one game in Dallas would get hurt? But Nico Harrison is currently meeting with the media in Dallas to go over, just the end-of-year briefing. And since he traded Luka Doncic, the Dallas Maverick fan base has been beside themselves, chanting that Nico needs to be fired. And then, when Doncic came back for his first game back in Dallas, I mean, obviously it was quite the spectacle, and he had a great game, and the crowd was almost entirely cheering for the Lakers as opposed to the Mavericks. I mean, pretty uncomfortable stuff. Nico Harrison with the following today, apparently, in dealing with the media. Quote, "I did know Luka was important to the fan base. Let me start that over. Quote, I did know Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't know quite to this level," end quote. Does that feel like completely tone deaf, or is that a guy that is so locked in on his craft and the things behind the scenes that he doesn't pay attention to what the fans think? I do think that there's an element of, when you hear that, you say to yourself, is this guy completely clueless? But at the same time, I think you would be surprised to know how much people that work in a particular sport, in building rosters, in coaching, whatever it may be, are completely tone deaf to the stuff happening around them, truth be told. I mean, that seems like an unbelievable quote. But then at the same time, you're like, okay, he's got to build a roster. He's got to figure out, salary caps. There's a lot that goes into it. I'm not excusing the guy, but you would think, though, that just through the attendance of games, you would be aware of how popular and how important a player is to a fan base, right?
especially of that magnitude.
I mean, I don't know so much that, and I realize that this is sports talk radio in Indy, and this guy's talking about Luka. I get it. But I will say, I don't know that it was as much or as shocking of the fact that he traded him as much as what little he got for him, right?
Yes.
Because the Lakers, the other side of it too is, aren't the Lakers kind of hamstrung as well? Because Luka's a fabulous player, but LeBron is obviously not going to be around forever. And then who is their supporting cast, and what sort of future picks do they have? right?
Not many future picks. I know that.
I'm trying to think of who all they
Austin Reeves.
Okay, the Lakers sent out Anthony Davis, obviously.
They sent out Max Christie.
A 2029 first-round pick and a 2025 second-round pick.
I don't know if there are protections on that pick or not.
By the way, do you know the other player that was a throw-in on the whole thing?
Maxi Kleba.
Aside from him?
To which team?
To Utah.
Oh, that's right. He was the whole starting point of this. Jalen Hood-Schifino.
Jalen Hood-Schifino, in fact.
Who finished the year with the 76ers.
Jalen Hood-Schifino, this happens sometimes to players in the NBA. I think when kids go away to college, I say this a lot to kids, and I know it from firsthand experience. And I remember my cousin saying this to me, and I didn't take it to heart. I should have. And probably nobody takes it to heart when I say it to him because you're 18 and you're a moron, right? When you go away to college, if you're listening to my voice right now and you are a junior or senior in high school, or for that matter, a young person at all who has yet to go to college, and you have vision or aspiration of going to college, the first semester of college is incredibly important because what you do the first semester to lay the foundation goes such a long way towards determining how your college career and your habits and your time management are going to go. And if you get off to a rocky start as a freshman, and I don't mean struggling with a class here and there or being homesick, I'm talking about going to class or just being diligent and finding responsibility. Your first semester is so critically important towards exactly that, in setting the tone for the rest of your time. And for an NBA player, just finding the right spot and getting reps early is such an important part of your career because the last thing you want to be is trade deadline guy, right? Expiring contract guy. Malcolm Brogdon has become trade deadline guy. How often do you see it where on a trade deadline he's thrown in at the last second because it's a salary match guy or an expiring contract guy, and boom, you're just thrown in, and before you know it, you've played for 4 teams in 3 years. And you just can never find your footing. I mean, Jalen Hood-Schifino is only 21 years old, but at this point, I mean, do we even know what he can do at the professional level? And he was a really good player in his year at Indiana.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we do just yet, right?
I can't remember. Has he been in the league for 1 year or 2?
I think this is year 2. Him and Trace came out together, so whatever year this is for Trace, Jackson Davis.
Who's another one, by the way, and I really like Trace Jackson Davis, but his minutes have drastically decreased over the course of, he's kind of fallen out of rotation in Golden State, even though, to his credit, he has shown this is the completion of year number 2 for Jalen Hood-Schifino. The completion and he has played in a total of 36 games.
How many of them were this year?
15. He played at 21 as a rookie. I think he got hurt, right? 21 as a rookie, and then 15 this year, 2 with the Lakers, 13 with the Sixers. He did, I think, at times show a little bit. He started playing with Philly. He started getting minutes, at least. I mean, that's the first step. He's only 21 years old.
I know we haven't focused a ton on them, but Zach Edey has been really, really good for Memphis lately.
Hey.
Ever since the departure of, I can't even remember his name now, the guy they let go.
Jaren Jackson Jr. was talking a lot after Minnesota, one of their wins recently, about the importance of Zach Edey. And he is now a double-double guy. Zach Edey certainly is rebounding where he has become, a very reliable player for them, more so than his offensive game. But yes, been a good player.
And then you've got Khalil Ware down in Miami. He's
playing
starting.
well. He had a good year, right?
Yeah, he had a solid year, yeah.
Miami, I believe, year in and year out, top to bottom, is the most well-prepared and well-coached team in the NBA. I mean, that is no disrespect to Rick Carlisle or Doc Rivers or, obviously, when healthy, Greg Popovich or Steve Kerr, any of them. They're all fabulous basketball minds and coaches. But in terms of getting the most from possession to possession out of sets, out of his team, and just having a Brad Stevens-led team type feel of knowing where the ball is at all times and looking very well prepared, Eric Spoelstra's teams do that as well, I think, better than anybody in the NBA.
I think another guy who's approaching that conversation is, I think it's Mark Daigneault in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, they got a ton of talent, too. How about Oklahoma City winning by 51?
That is absolutely wild.
I mean, and I'll tell you another guy and he had problems and ran into difficulty in Boston.
Ime Udoka?
Yes. He's a very good coach in Houston.
I think he's a Coach of the Year finalist.
Yeah, Houston is also getting the very most out of their roster. Now, they're down 1-0, but they're getting the most out of their roster. And one last note before to put a tie on the national NBA talk. This is the time of year where Jimmy Butler shows that he is still a Bulldog.
It's amazing to me how he just loafs through the regular season, and then it's postseason time, and it's like LeBron or Michael Jordan takes over
That
inside
dude,
of him.
to use the quote, he is simply built different. He just is. JMV will join us just a couple of minutes. We'll hand it off to him here and get you set for his show as we look back on game number 1 and preview the NFL draft. I know those will be two big topics for him as well here on The Fan. May must be upon us because we've got some tickets to start giving away tomorrow, correct, Eddie?
Yeah, we'll have some Grand Prix tickets to give away, Jake.
So the IndyCar Grand Prix that takes place to kind of kickstart the month of May. I love it. I love and by the way, yesterday, I got word, Judy Greason is a longtime IndyCar fan and friend who I've met at racetracks over the course of the years, or it was in that capacity I met her, I should say. And she had posted something on social media over the weekend and then sent me a text saying that the MCL in Speedway was closing. And I'm like, wait a minute. I mean, it's been there for, I don't know, 60 years. And the Speedway Shopping Center right off of 25th Street, in between Crawfordsville and 25th. And God love Judy, nothing against her, but I thought, well, this has to be error. There's no way that the Speedway MCL is closing because, you know, it still looks new and the food is great. And MCL's got, I mean, I know Craig McGoy of MCL really well, just a fabulous guy. And they've got 13 locations, and I don't know. I thought that would surprise me. And so I called John Orovitz, longtime motorsports writer who worked at the MCL in West Lafayette when he was in college. I worked for a week at the MCL in Bloomington because they didn't have any openings, and I was put on pots and pans. And I'm not going to lie, it wasn't for me. But MCL itself, I mean, I absolutely love it and have gone there forever. So I called Oreo and I said, look, I don't know if this is true or not that they're closing, but do you want to? And he said, well, I'm a MCL loyalist. Let's go. Let's just have lunch anyway. So yesterday, I mean, I was going to my family's for Easter dinner, but for lunch, Oreo and I met over in Speedway and walked in to the MCL, which looked like, I mean, you know, there was no sign of closing whatsoever. You know, you ever gone to a place like that, Eddie, and you can kind of tell they have signs up that are, you know, like, or you can tell that they're already starting to break stuff down.
Yeah.
None of that. There was no indication. So we get up to, you know, order our food, and we order our food, and I said, hey, is this true that you guys are closing? And the lady said, yeah, today's our last day at the end of the night. So we got one last lunch in at MCL. It was fabulous. Still a number of locations, but the Speedway one, that James Garner was a huge fan of that location. That is now closed. Also, today, a big shock in the college basketball and NBA world. Cooper Flagg has announced that he is declaring for the NBA draft. Now, I have the simulator right here. We'll run it through one time. Every time I do this, somehow it lands on San Antonio getting the number one pick, which only seems fitting because anytime there's a breakthrough generational talent, whether it be David Robinson, Tim Duncan, or Wembanyama, San Antonio seems to get the number one pick. In doing it right now, let's see. I'm running the simulator. Here we go. With the first pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Chicago Bulls select Cooper Flagg from Duke University. There you go. That's who the simulator says this time by. JMV has walked in, getting all set up. And
MCL, huh? You know, that's the location. True story. When my grandmother was alive, would go over there weekly and get the Jack Benny plate.
Oh, yeah.
And then when people left their food there, would go get all the chicken bones, put them in napkins, and take them home to her dog Pepper.
Really?
True story.
All right.
Or Bo.
Aren't
Yes.
chicken bones supposed to be bad for dogs?
I think they were bad for the dogs. Yes, I don't think they were good. I think there's like stuff like that going on. MCL location in Bloomington back in the day on the Bloomington Mall was a great location.
Yeah.
Yep, great location. But a shout out to MCL Cafeteria.
John, you were able to do a victory celebration in terms of the JMV Takeover.
I
Saturday,
did.
right?
That was fun as hell. Those are the good ones.
Now, question is, game two. They're going to get two. If they go up 2-0, it's never a series until the home team wins a game, right? I mean, excuse me, visiting team. Never a series until the visiting team gets a road win. But if they go up 2-0, you feel pretty good.
I'd like to see if Doc Rivers is going to change the starting lineup up. There's no way you can go with Kuzma and Prince. I know he defended Kuzma after the game. Well, you got to get the ball to score. I mean, hell, if you're just standing around out there, you
Which he
probably
did a
should
lot
put
of.
better than just zeros up
It's
there.
unbelievable.
Yeah,
And I'm telling you, he came in late. His final time coming onto the floor, and then once they kind of called off the dogs and run, you could see. Like I looked at Kuzma, and I'm like, he's aware. He's got to get like at least something right.
And the other part about this is too, the Pacers are countering because everybody always talks about, and I mentioned this, the free throw line, 15, and you want him to miss Giannis that many, but at the same time, I like the Pacers are aggressive too. I mean, the Pacers are being as aggressive as Giannis tries to be aggressive. I mean, he does. He dribbles and initiates contact. And people are asking about Nembhard. Well, that's a foul because he's initiating contact. Well, it's the same thing Giannis does. So I thought the game plan was great too. I thought Nembhard was great on both ends of the floor.
He
I mean,
was.
coming off, every time Giannis would spin, did you notice every time he would spin, Nembhard or somebody else was there kind of digging on the ball?
And they also rotated people through on him, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Jarris Walker took his turn. Toppin took some time against him. And Turner, and they kept Turner out of foul trouble for the most part, which was big.
I thought that they made him make quicker decisions. He had 1 assist, and he's been, upwards. He had a triple-double last game out. I thought that he was forced to make decisions on the move as opposed to being and deciding where he is going to throw it once the double came over. So I thought that was a part of it that I saw too. It was really good game plan.
They're going to have to
Plus, you
change
knocked
this
down
much
shots,
for game 2 because Lillard's going to play in game 2.
I would imagine he's going to be there, right? Yeah.
Did you see his outfit by chance?
Yeah, it was kind of a cross between the Cosby Show and Cross Colors.
Yes, that's exactly right. Like he had on like a Cosby sweater looking thing, and then a pair of pants that looked like the fella from the Dexy's Midnight Runner video.
Yeah, it was weird.
And
it
then
was
clown shoes, right?
It looked like he was going to be a part of a very special episode of A Different World.
Speaking of very special episode, I was watching a very special episode of Different Strokes the other night.
Yeah.
Not Bicycle Man, but it was an episode nonetheless
no Gordon Jump.
where Willis bought a gun. Did you know Andrew Dice Clay was in there?
I did, yeah.
It was the Andrew Dice Clay episode, and I'm like, man, I didn't remember Andrew Dice Clay from Different Strokes.
The poor Gordon Jump. Mr. Carlson. I wouldn't be taking on that role, Mr. Carlson.
We got a bit of a problem here. You got a big problem.
No doubt.
Yeah.
There's a lot of roles you could take. Maybe sidestep that one.
That's right. All right, John, big show lined up?
Yes, Eddie Gill, 4 o'clock hour. Stephen Holder. We got Colts Draft later on this week. Busy week for us all. It's going to be a blast.
All right, sounds good. John
the Australian
will be
guys,
up with
too,
you.
shout out.
What's that?
The Australian guys. Ask them if Icehouse still plays in Australia often.
Okay. They're going to be in here tomorrow, actually.
The band Icehouse.
All right, I'll ask them. We're going to dinner tonight. Maybe we'll have an ice house. They don't still have those, do they?
They do.
Do they really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He'll still give you a hangover in about 5 seconds, too.
John's up next. We're back with you at noon tomorrow. Thanks for listening to Query & Company.